We were able to induce SVT with pacing from the higher right atrium, and SVT was able to be initiated with an AH prolongation. So we've got a prolonged AH time here, and then we've got this SVT occurring, this narrow complex tachycardia. It's a short RP tachycardia, so focal ATAC is less likely. But the VA time is not simultaneous. The VA time here was 120 milliseconds measured from here to here. This is more than 70 milliseconds and therefore not in keeping with slow-fast AVGRT. And so we're thinking more like fast-slow AVGRT or an ORT. However, given that we thought the parahesian pacing excluded a septal accessory pathway, we're thinking this is a typical AVGRT. And this is also in keeping with the earliest retrograde atrial activation being the CS-OS region. The ECG shows a narrow complex tachycardia with potentially a retrograde P wave being present in the ST segment. Tachycardia spontaneously terminated in the atrium, so we had termination with conduction to the atrium, and this is also in keeping with a re-entrant arrhythmia such as AVGRT or ORT, and less in keeping with focal ATAC. Because focal ATAC, you'd expect, if this was focal ATAC, you'd expect atrial depolarization conducting to the ventricle, atrial depolarization conducting to the ventricle, and then on the last beat of tachycardia, you'd expect atrial depolarization conducting to the ventricle, and then no more tachycardia would occur. So you'd expect the last EGM to be a ventricular EGM, whereas here the last EGM is an atrial EGM. So this is less in keeping with focal ATAC and more in keeping with AVGRT or AVRT as a diagnosis. So what were our thoughts so far? Well, our SVT induction initiated without a large AH jump, with earliest activation in the CS ostium. The VA time was 120 milliseconds, and we had termination of tachycardia with an atrial beat as the last EGM. So we're thinking it's less likely focal ATAC, and most likely fast-slow AVGRT. We thought that we have excluded ORT because the parahesian pacing showed a nodal response. And so we thought we should perform RV overdrive pacing to doubly confirm that this is AVGRT and not focal ATAC. And we can also assess the stim to A and VA time to ensure that it's in keeping with AVGRT rather than ORT. It's good to have multiple proofs. Attempts to perform RV overdrive pacing terminated tachycardia. The reason for this termination in tachycardia is because of inappropriate sensing of our stimulator, of our pacing stimulator.